Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman and Company on the 440 Sports Network. Glad to have everybody a part of the program today. Thank you so much for joining us here again. 440 Sports on YouTube at Stillman and Co. And of course, we are presented every single day by my friends here at Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. And of course, you can, get us on YouTube. That's where we like you to find us. But of course, we're also, now I'm going to start putting out the Twitter link and things like that as we can continue along, get as many views as possible. But again, tell your friends, like and subscribe. We are well over 2,800 subscribers on YouTube. We'd like to be up over 3,000. So hit that subscribe button. Tell your friends. And holy crap, this morning I woke up, and this tells you how obsessed I am, and this is probably a little depressing. But this morning, I went to our podcast, the 440 podcast page, where we're able to figure things out. And I went and looked, and I wanted to see what it was saying as far as the podcast downloads are concerned. Holy freaking crap. A lot of you out there are downloading the podcast. So I appreciate that, and we are on our way. Okay. Yesterday, we enjoyed the Titans win for the fact that, well, they won. And the Titans don't do a lot of winning around here. They used to. Not so much anymore. So now that they've won a game, now that we know that it is actually feasible that they can win a football game, no matter how unfeasible winning that way is. Again, the guy drops the ball at the 1 yard line. They snap a ball into Kyler's head. They fumble an interception, which you land on in the end zone for a touchdown. Again, that's not really a formula for winning football games, and we all know that. But now that we know that they can win a game, now that we know that Cam Ward can engineer a fourth quarter comeback, a game-winning drive, what do you want to see out of the Titans moving forward? What is now the goal? Because in the third quarter on Sunday, this entire fan base, even the most ardent Titan supporters, Whitty, I'm talking to you, probably even said, wow, this team needs to just absolutely hit the reset button. So now what do you want to do? Do you want to see if the Titans can win on Sunday and get to 2-3 headed into the Vrabel game? Can you imagine that? If they win 2 in a row going into the Vrabel game, what that would mean? Or do you want to see the Titans try to go down the path that most of us assumed and considered as the top choice, which was to tear it down? And the good news about winning the game on Sunday and the way you won the game on Sunday is that some of those tradable assets are upping their trade value. So let's use Calvin Ridley as an example. Whether Calvin Ridley was just getting back into the flow of the season, or those Scott Summers wide receiver glasses worked, Ridley on Sunday had 5 catches for 131 yards. He hasn't had a drop in 2 weeks, and his Pro Football Focus grade on Sunday was 82.2. Did you watch the Chiefs receivers last night? They don't even look for the ball. There are a lot of teams that need help at wide receiver, and Calvin Ridley could help those teams. But at the same time, Calvin Ridley is Cam Ward's top receiving target, and he is the most dynamic player outside of Cam. And I don't even think Cam's really all that dynamic right now. Cam has the most potential, but he is the most dynamic player in the Titans offense. So what do? Now that there's good film out there on Ridley, do you start calling teams and saying, hey, would you have any interest in Calvin Ridley? What about Chig Okonkwo? Chig Okonkwo had some big catches, including in the 2-minute drive. And then he had that one play where he okey-doked those two defenders and ran up. Chig is a receiver, has a quarterback rating of 116.7 when targeted on Sunday. Chig is a free agent at the end of the year. But we saw Chig make 2 big catches at the end of the game on Sunday that showed his athleticism that, again, for 4 years, Chig has teased Titans fans for what he could potentially be as a wide receiving target. But I think we've all seen enough Chig over the years to know if you're expecting Chig to break out and become Antonio Gates, that's just not going to happen. So knowing that Chig is a free agent at the end of the year, do you look to move on? Or do you say, you know what? Chig and Cam Ward are starting to develop some chemistry, and it's not like they've got a lot at tight end after him and Gunnar Helm. So if we're worried about Cam Ward developing, let's go ahead and keep Chig in there instead of going out and trying to pick up a pick in exchange for Chig Okonkwo to a team that would probably need a tight end who can help the passing game. Then there's the defensive side of the ball. What about trading Jeffery Simmons? We've talked a lot about trading Jeffery Simmons over the last year and a half. And last year it was, they should trade Simmons. He doesn't do anything good. They should trade Simmons. He's annoying and obnoxious. They should trade Simmons. And the pushback when it came to Simmons was, well, what's the going rate for a defensive tackle that doesn't pressure the quarterback? He's the best player on your defense. He's the best player on your team. But what is the going rate for a guy who doesn't impact the game, but you're paying him like he impacts the game? What? It's not a first-round pick. Well, right now, Jeffery Simmons is playing the best ball he's maybe ever played. And that is saying something, because while I get on Simmons a lot, Simmons has had a lot of great in his career. He right now is a game wrecker, and he is playing like an all-pro. And if you trade Simmons, you are signaling to your team that no matter what they do, it doesn't matter, because everybody is expendable, and the goal is for next season and the year after that and the year after that. And what we're asking you to be able to do on Sunday, that doesn't matter this year. But that being said, with the way Jeffery Simmons is playing right now, Jeffery Simmons, I think, has real value. So what do? Do you say, hey, let's build off of last week? We want a team where they learn how to be professional. We want a team that goes out there every Sunday and gives it their all. We want a team that learns how to win. So maybe it won't be this year. And maybe guys like Chig and Roger McCreary and Draymond Jones, and maybe they won't be on the team next year, but they'll help this team with Cam Ward and J.C. Latham and Femi Oladejo and Kevin Winston and Alec Iomanner and Chimere Dike. It'll help this team and these young players learn how to win. Do you say, let's take last week and let's try to accelerate the rebuild by taking the positive out of what Jeffery Simmons did and has been doing, the positive out of what Calvin Ridley did, accounting for half of your yards in the passing game, the positive of what Chig did at Arizona, and just sending it to every team in the league and saying, every team in the league, please get these players. What do? And I actually am fascinated by how you guys would react to this. So I'm just saying, what do you want them to do? And I have the answer of what I would do. And I've got a feeling most people aren't going to like this. But here's what I would do if I were the Titans. I think I would set a price and let everybody in the league know what the prices are. And if you get the price, you sell the player. And if not, you hold. I think that's the smartest answer, Because what it keeps you from doing is having a fire sale. It keeps you from taking assets and giving them up for pennies on the dollar. Everybody likes a deal, not just me, and I love a deal. I am the perfect person that an outlet mall targets. Hey, this jacket is really worth $150, but we'll sell it to you for $20. And I'm sitting there thinking, this is a $150 jacket. But I know it's really just a $20 jacket. It might be a $15 jacket. But again, I'm the sucker here. And I get that. I understand that. Don't make any mistake when it comes to me. But instead of having a fire sale, if you do what I think is the smartest decision, which is to set prices, let the rest of the league know what the prices are, and if you get the price, sell, and if not, you hold, then you are getting what you consider to be fair value for your assets to really help launch your rebuild. So right now, if I were the Titans, and I have said this now for 3 weeks, the price for Jeffery Simmons would be a first-round pick in the 2026 draft. Not a first-round pick in 2027, not a second-round pick. I'm not going to have somebody lowball me and then me say, well, that might be a high second-rounder, and so let's go ahead and make the No. If you want Jeffery Simmons, it'll cost you a first-round pick in next year's draft. And if somebody calls and offers me a first-round pick in next year's draft, I take the deal. And the reason I take the deal is because it's at least one player, could be more because you could trade it back, but it's at least one player of contractual control for 5 years during Cam Ward's age 24 to 29 seasons. And then the money that I would be paying Simmons next year, I get back. I'll pay all the money this year, but the money next year I'll get back and I'll be able to go spend in free agency. I won't be able to get Jeffery Simmons in free agency, but I'll be able to go out and get some good players with that money. And so now I've used Simmons and turned that into at least one first-round pick, maybe, again, more, because what if it's the 18th pick in the draft and somebody wants to move up from 24? And so they deal me their 24th pick plus 2/3. Now I've turned it into 3. It gives you options. And for me with Simmons, I think you've got probably 1 or 2 more dominant years left, and you're not going to be competing for the Super Bowl in those 1 or 2 years. Then there's Calvin Ridley. The price I would have for Calvin Ridley is a second-round pick. I think there is value in having Calvin Ridley on the team. And I know he dropped the ball early in the season, but I don't think Calvin Ridley's a bum. He's the best receiver you have. And so if people are calling up saying, well, we'll give you a 4th this year, but you give us a 5th next year and we'll be not interested. But if you are willing to offer a 2026 second-round pick, I'll deal Calvin Ridley. 4 years of contractual control for a top 60 player. Then you have to have the discussion internally about what you're going to do with guys that are on expiring contracts. For instance, are you going to extend Chig? I'd say you're probably not. And there will be a market in free agency for Chig Okonkwo. Shocking, I know. But if somebody was looking to help their passing game and they were willing to give me a 4th-round pick in exchange for Chig Okonkwo or a 3rd-round pick in the 2027 draft, I'd do it. If somebody calls me and they want to make the Jarvis Brownlee trade, I'm not interested. Roger McCreary, same way. Set a price. Are you going to bring Roger McCreary back? His snap count on Sunday indicates you're probably not. So why not be interested in making a trade? L'Jarius Sneed, just like Ridley, just like Dan Moore, just like Simmons. L'Jarius Sneed, now that he's starting to get in football shape, is playing better. And is there a team out there that would take on the L'Jarius Sneed contract and give you a pick in exchange or something? And again, set a price. And if somebody meets the price, good. Then you've got Jeffery Simmons. And I've got a 1st-round pick in next year's draft. And it may end up being 32. but I'll take the first round pick in next year's draft. You want Calvin Ridley? Now I have an extra second round pick in next year's draft. You need picks. You needed picks at the beginning of this process. You needed picks before you won the Arizona game. You're going to need picks after the Arizona game. But you have to make sure you get decent value for these picks, especially for guys who won't be on the team next year. And the better these guys play, the more you won't want to trade them. Because, again, the Jeffery Simmons talk went from, we should trade Simmons, and the pushback being, yeah, well, if you trade Simmons, you probably won't get much in return. So what's the point in trading Simmons? To now, we can't trade Simmons. He's too good. Right. And that's why other people would want to trade for Jeffery Simmons. So, again, I know what I would do. What I would do is I would say, hey, I'm setting a price on everybody on the roster. And I think they're fair prices. Again, I'm not asking for 2 first-round picks for Calvin Ridley. I'm asking for a first-round pick for an all-pro caliber player in Jeffery Simmons. So would you be willing to make that deal? And what I think is hilarious is I do feel like I can hear, even though without seeing the chat and without taking phone calls like I used to, I can feel like I can hear the narrative shift from, we should trade Jeff, he's no good, to, we can't trade Jeff. And for me, I've said the same thing the entire time. It'll cost you a first-round pick. If I was Dallas, knowing Jerry, if I was Dallas, I'd make the deal for Jeffery Simmons. I'd trade the Green Bay first. I would not trade my first. I would trade the Green Bay first for Simmons. And I would do it because if I'm Jerry, I can say, hey, Simmons is half the price of Micah Parsons. He's better against the run. He's starting to get after the quarterback. I don't need Simmons to be that big space eater in the middle. I have Kenny Clark there for that. And while he's not Micah's age, he's still in his prime. So instead of Micah, I've now gotten way better with my run defense with Kenny Clark and Simmons. I'm able to get after the quarterback because I've got Simmons, and I still have the Green Bay first rounder next year. And I think then that would take some of the heat off of Jerry, and a guy like Dak Prescott can say, hey, Jerry's putting his money where his mouth is, and Jeffery Simmons helps us win right now. But I don't know that the Titans, I would have called Jerry the second that Micah deal got done. I said, hey, you want Jeffery Simmons? It'll make it look better. Hopefully Jerry would say back, I want him. I want him. I need him. And I would have talks with these players and say, hey, do you know the state of this team? You know that we haven't played well enough. We're 1-4. And we needed a miracle to win on Sunday. I'm glad we won. You guys keep doing what you're doing. Ridley, Simmons, Chig, L'Jarius Sneed, whomever. You guys keep doing what you're doing. But you are going to hear your name in trade rumors because we're going to have to do what's best for the team. So I am saying set the prices. And if you get the prices, make the trade. And if somebody tries to lowball you and says, I'll give you Simmons for a third, then fuck off, and I'm not interested in that, and Simmons will play defensive tackle for the Tennessee Titans. You don't worry about the rumors and the speculation and everything. You go play ball. And I know it's probably easier said than done, but again, who gives a rat's ass if their focus wanes a little bit and it costs you a game if you're trying to get maximum value? And at some point, you're going to have to do something that hurts a little bit in order to get more picks. Last year, the obvious one was to trade the number 1 overall pick. And the Giants, reportedly, the Giants were offering a massive package to make it worth your while, and you still said no. So at some point, you've got to amass a bunch of extra picks, or else Cam better be the guy, and the pick you get this year for being lousy better be Jamar Chase. I like more throws at the dartboard. So at some point, you're going to have to do something that's a little uncomfortable. And so far, the Titans haven't really been willing to do that other than trading out of 35 last year to pick up an extra third. And right now, that looks like a disastrous decision because I think Oladejo kind of sucks. So that's the first thing. Now that they've won a game, now that there's some positivity, now that there's some good tape on guys like Simmons and Snead and Ridley and Chig, what do? Do you try to ride the momentum? Do you want these guys to be a part of your rebuild? So even though they may not be here when you're good, they were a part of helping you learn how to be good, i.e. DeMarco Murray or Eric Decker or some of these other guys that were with the Titans. Delanie Walker. Delanie Walker did not play any meaningful football for the Titans from 2019 to 2022. So Delanie was on IR when they went to the AFC title game, and Delanie was not on the team when they won the division in 2020, when they were the number 1 seed in 2021. But I can tell you Delanie Walker was a big part of that core of Henry and Byard and Tannehill and Davis and Jonnu and Taylor Lewan and Jack Conklin and Ben Jones, and he was a big part of that. So what do you want to do? That's the first thing. The second thing, I saw this yesterday, and it pissed me off. I'm going to be honest. It absolutely set me off, and I'll tell you what that is in a second. But first, I want to tell you about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love that Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. They've been in business since 1990. They are family-owned and operated. That's right. They are family-owned and operated. They take great care of my home, and I am telling you that they can do the exact same for you and your home. It's really, really simple. So do like I do. Go to happyhiller.com and just log in right there. Learn more as well. 100% satisfaction of Happy will be here. The service is free. If a customer is not pleased with the work performed, they will make it right. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Proud supporters of the Nashville Predators, the Vanderbilt Commodores, and the Tennessee Volunteers. Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today. Okay. I got to get to this just because it drove me insane. So Dan Orlovsky took to Twitter yesterday to talk about the way Cam Ward played. Now, remember, Dan Orlovsky has to watch every NFL game because after a Sunday, he has to go on every ESPN show and talk about every NFL game. And for some reason, Dan Orlovsky, nobody is better when it comes to praising quarterbacks than Dan Orlovsky. And he put it out there yesterday that Cam Ward's tape was amazing. And I'm like, what? Cam's tape was amazing? For the first 3 quarters, he was missing guys constantly. He threw one ball in the dirt. He threw one ball behind Tyler Lockett. He threw one ball in front of Alec Iomanner. He threw 2 balls too far deep for Chimere Dike. He had a perfectly designed play. I don't know why they designed the play for Julius Chestnut, but a perfectly designed play for Julius Chestnut to get him a touchdown, and he missed on that. Until the 4th quarter and really the 2-minute drill, outside of that throw down the middle to Ridley, Cam sucked. And you're going to tell me his tape was amazing? And of course, Twitter was like, I trust Dan Orlovsky more than I trust you. And I'm like, of course you trust Dan Orlovsky. Dan Orlovsky is saying what you want to hear. And when somebody says what you want to hear, that's then what you believe. He's better than we thought, Dan Orlovsky said. If the Titans do right and around him, he will be a top 8 player at quarterback easily. What? Top 8? So you mean to tell me that he's going to be in the same mix? You feel comfortable after watching the game Sunday? Dan Orlovsky feels like he's going to be in a category with Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, Jaden Daniels, Baker Mayfield, those guys. Again, he threw for 265. Dak Prescott throws for 450 every week. What are we talking about? So I waited for Blake Beddingfield's column to drop at paulkaharski.com because, again, Blake follows the Titans probably closer than Dan Orlovsky, but also Blake shoots it straight. And Blake Beddingfield said, because, again, when it comes to what people are actually analyzing, I want to hear the truth and not affirmation of, I want to believe Cam is a franchise quarterback. And surprise, surprise, Blake Beddingfield did not think Cam's tape was, as Dan Orlovsky put it, quote unquote, incredible. Here's what he wrote at paulkaharski.com. Quote, rookie quarterback Cam Ward came alive at the 2-minute drive by being decisive and in control, spreading the ball around to 4 different receivers on that drive to put the team in position for a game-winning field goal. Ward, with a poor throw on 3rd down on the opening drive, dropped the arm slot to 3/4 and led Alec Iomanor too far for a conversion, resulting in a punt. Ward overthrew Julius Chestnut on a wide-open play. First, why was Chestnut the receiver, not Pollard or Spears? Good question, by the way. Utilizing the right personnel is just as important as play calling. Chestnut is not a receiver who can adjust to a poorly thrown ball, but Ward, as Blake writes, also had poor foot mechanics, standing tall with his hips open and not stepping into an easy, quick throw. Blake continued. Again, this is paulkaharski.com. Quote, Ward's accuracy is an issue. He was 53% for the game and 51.8% for the season. His best passes are corner routes, but he has struggled with in-cutting routes like slants and even short, high-percentage throws like outside screens. Ward is inconsistent because he is late on throws. Being late, he speeds his throwing mechanics up, which forces him to change arm angles and leave his feet and hips open to deliver with velocity to make up for delivering the ball late. Again, he's not saying Cam is a lost cause or Cam stinks, or he's not saying that. He's saying Cam's got issues on the tape. And if you watch the game, that's obvious. He's throwing the ball in the dirt to guys in the first 3 quarters. That doesn't exactly sound like Dan Orlovsky's "he was amazing" comments, does it? And what Dan Orlovsky is doing, and James Foster, our film guru, who will have a breakdown, I believe tomorrow, maybe later today, on the 440 Sports YouTube page. But James Foster pointed out to me what Dan Orlovsky is doing by pumping Cam Ward's tires is he is taking advantage of you, the Titan fan. He is telling the Titan fan what they want to hear because that will get him followers and attention from one fan base. Send out 32 tweets like that, and now you've got every fan base thinking that their quarterback is the Messiah because you, Dan Orlovsky, told them what they wanted to hear. I think old buddy Tic Tac Titan does the exact same thing. When the team is down, and the fans are down on the team, he piles on. When the fans want to be optimistic, he jumps for joy and says, let Rand cook. But that's not the truth. And maybe that's why Dan Orlovsky has had the success Dan Orlovsky has had. And I'm not. But I'm okay with that. Because I can't watch the game on Sunday and say, Cam Ward was amazing. And that is exactly what he was saying on social media. And there's no way. Again, Blake Beddingfield watches the tape too. There's no way you could watch that game and say Cam was amazing. You can be happy for what he did in the 2-minute drill. That is not the same as amazing, which is, again, what he put up there. Couple other things I want to get to here quickly. Number one, holy crap, did I get cold taked last night? Because I looked like a real dipshit on Twitter after tweeting out before halftime that Jacksonville stunk and Trevor Lawrence stunk, only to wake up and see Jacksonville had won the game almost miraculously to start 4-1 for the first time since 2007. But the story of the game, and I'm sorry to Jacksonville, but this is just how it is. The story of the game is the Chiefs. The Chiefs are 2-3, and it looks like the Chiefs are done for. Patrick Mahomes, it looks like he's doing everything he can to try to will that team to victory. And even he yesterday threw a pick six. I mean, he throws a ball at the end of the game. Hollywood Brown's not even looking for it, hits him in the shoulder pad. But let me just say this. I'm not ready to give up on the Chiefs. The Ravens, I can give up on the Ravens. Their defense stinks. Lamar is hurt. They're already down 1-4, and they've lost to almost every good team in the AFC. They're done. They may make the playoffs because they're not in a good division, but without Lamar and with that shitty defense, they're going to give Pittsburgh way too far of a head start, and I don't think the Ravens are going to make the playoffs. Goodbye to Baltimore. I'm not doing that with the Chiefs. I will not do that with Kansas City. I lived through 2021 when Kansas City came into Nissan Stadium and got their asses kicked. I think the score was 27-3. And the Titans did whatever they want. Henry, Tannehill, A.J. Brown, David Long Jr., Bud Dupree went off in that game. And everybody said then, because the Chiefs were really struggling on the offensive line, and they're like, oh, yep, is the window closed on the Chiefs? As long as the Chiefs have that quarterback and that coach, they've got a shot. Now, they have got to get better and in a hurry. But with that quarterback and that coach, I am not writing off the Chiefs. Jacksonville, maybe they're good. I don't know. I tend to doubt it. Again, when Trevor Lawrence fumbled that ball at the goal line, I said, how many years do we need to give Trevor to prove that he can be a good NFL quarterback only to see him fumble at the goal line? But I'm going to say, the big story right now, it's the Chiefs. And it looks bad for the Chiefs. But I am not willing to say that Kansas City is done for. I will not do it. And they'd have to be something like 3-8 before I'd say, okay, now the wheels are falling off. And you know me, I like to first guess. I hate people that wait until something is obvious and then they say, yeah, you know what? I think this guy. But if the Chiefs end up being bad, I'll be the one to admit it, to say, hey, I was holding on. I was holding on to the Kansas City Chiefs. I didn't want to count out Mahomes, and now they're 4-12. So yeah, they stink. That I will give you, but I'm not ready to count them out yet. And then there's what happened Saturday, which I don't, Miami may be the best team in the country in college football. That is not what I want to get into, though. What I want to get into is what I think is now becoming apparent. And I am ready to call it. Remember, I have the guarantee list and I have the calling it list. The guarantee list is I guarantee. I'll be shocked if this doesn't happen. I put my game. The last time I guaranteed something, I guaranteed the Rams to beat the Titans. And so on the new program, I am 1-0 on guarantees. I'm not guaranteeing this, but I am calling it. Carson Beck is going to be the number 1 pick in next year's draft. And I feel very confident about that after watching Miami crush Florida State on Saturday. And I think he'll go to the Jets, who look like they made this year's Brian Callahan hire and Aaron Glenn, because Aaron Glenn looks like he's in over his head with no answers. And in New York City, you don't get the benefit of the doubt like you do in Tennessee. And so I expect that, barring a miracle, Aaron Glenn will be one and done in New York. Boy, I bet it felt good for Aaron Glenn to call up Aaron Rodgers, get him to fly all the way out to New York, and then fire him. How's it feel now, Aaron? Boy, you were the man then. But it's not that Carson Beck is that good, that I think Carson Beck will go with the number 1 pick. I'm not even a Carson Beck fan. I didn't like Carson Beck when the way too early mock drafts were coming out for the 2025 draft that projected Carson Beck, the then Georgia quarterback, as the top pro choice. But I'm also not naive to how this works. We all go into the season with an idea as to who the top quarterback is going to be. The teams play, and this year, all of the top quarterbacks have looked very mediocre. And in some cases, like Arch Manning, they haven't looked very good at all. Very bad. And yet, every week, Carson Beck just keeps lighting up the scoreboard. So even though Carson Beck disappointed last year at Georgia, And even though he came into the year something like QB6 behind Arch and Lenoris Sellers and Garrett Nussmeier and Cade Klubnik and Drew Aller, I'm here to tell you, it's going to be Carson Beck, number 1 overall this year. And I bet Fernando Mendoza in Indiana ends up number 2 unless Lenoris Sellers rebounds. But Carson Beck went from top draft prospect to the transfer portal, and he will go back to top draft prospect. And what he did last year, leaving Georgia and going to Miami, is what Quinn Ewers should have done. He should have left Texas and gone somewhere else. But I'm calling it right now, as is, Carson Beck will be the number 1 overall pick, probably to the Jets, but whomever. Carson Beck will probably be the number 1 overall pick in next year's draft. Okay, Braden Gall joins us now here, 440 Sports on the program. So, Braden, I want to start right there with that Carson Beck take. I think he's going to be the number 1 pick in this year's draft. I know it's early. Do you think that I'm getting too far ahead of myself and saying what we've seen and what we've seen from the other quarterbacks, Carson Beck, number 1 off the board this year?
No, not necessarily. I guarantee that you will have a different number 1 overall quarterback every week on your show. That's what I guarantee. No, I think you're right to look at where he has gone in this process. I think going from number 1 overall pick, kind of entering last season, and then kind of falling out of the first round. He kind of started the year, I think you're correct. He started the year kind of 6th or 7th on most quarterback boards, kind of just in the top of the second round. He has played his way into the first round, no question. I think it's 3 games now with 4 touchdowns, no interceptions for Miami. They're clearly very good. He's very talented. He always has been, and he took too much heat last year for a bunch of drops from the receivers, the most drop-prone football team in all of the country last year. I think what's interesting, though, is he's not the only one that has played himself from second-round status into first-round status. John Mateer at Oklahoma is gone from second-round status to first-round status. Ty Simpson right now, for my money, might be the number 1 pick. You mentioned Fernando Mendoza. I think that's absolutely correct. Dante Moore at Oregon was like a fringe 3rd rounder. Now he's a first-round pick. And you're correct that Nussmeier, Sellers, Klubnik, Aller, and Manning, the 5 that we thought were sort of at the top of the board, have all kind of struggled to some degree. Now, let's be careful, though, because what you're explaining with Carson Beck is the exact same thing that's going to happen with Arch Manning. Oh, it didn't look perfect, so all us fans and us media and us non-experts are going to overreact to everything. Meanwhile, the scouts never really moved him off the top, right? Carson, to your point about Carson Beck, if he goes 1, it's because he never really dropped as far as we all thought he did, right? So I think that's what's going to happen with Arch, is that he's still absolutely a top 10, top 15 type of prospect. We're just going to think he's bad, and then all of a sudden he's going to be a top 5 pick at this time next year if he stays in school. But honestly, Ty Simpson is the one that I'm super intrigued by at Alabama. They play Missouri this weekend on the road. Keep an eye on him. He has been in complete control of the offense. Dante Moore at Oregon as well. But Carson Beck's been great. So no arguments with that. I don't think he's going number 1.
Okay, what do you make of what the Titans did on Sunday? And now that Calvin Ridley has 5 catches for 131 and has that tape out there, Jeffery Simmons has been playing dominant football. Roger McCreary is in the last year of his deal. Chig Okonkwo had a couple of plays on Sunday. He's in the last year of his deal. What does it mean for you in the Titans rebuild?
I think Titans fans need to be prepared for a lot of change on the roster. Calvin Ridley, no extra. They're not going to pay him whatever it is, $27 million or whatever the number is next year, and the next year after that. They're going to be out of that contract. L'Jarius Sneed, they're going to be out of that contract. Jeffery Simmons right now, they can opt out of that contract. He's the one that would make sense to bring back. So, and then you mentioned McCreary, you mentioned Chig. I just think fans need to be prepared. Like Kevin Zeitler might not be on the team next year, might retire, who knows? I just think there's a lot more change coming this offseason than we expected. And I think they have a lot more draft needs than we expected, which is, again, probably why you want to do the trade back thing now, start beating the drum on the trade back thing now. But I don't think the game or the fourth quarter means anything for the team long term. I think it's really important for the young players to feel what it's like to actually accomplish the goal. I think that you can't that That is so important to young players. Like Cam Ward looked happy for the first time all year, like running down the field after that throw to Ridley, where I don't know why Arizona goes man-to-man coverage and rolls up and press coverage with Ridley on a fade route with all that extra space to the boundary. I don't understand that call defensively, but Cam Ward and Ridley saw it right away. They attacked it. He is the best throw of his young career, but I don't think that quarter tells us like what he's going to be. If anything, I think the game is a reflection of who he is as an entire player right now.
What do you mean by that?
Which is he is an incredibly inconsistent, volatile, up and down player. He's going to have a quarter where he goes, what was it, 3 of 12? Like going into the fourth quarter, guys, his season-long completion percentage was below 50%. You know how hard it is to be below 50% completion percentage in the NFL in 2025? It's very hard. Now, it's a bad team. He's a young player. But what I think we saw is like what we're seeing who I don't think it's who he's going to be, but I think it's who he is right now, which is a very streaky player that when he gets hot and he doesn't have to think, can operate the system with sort of maximum efficiency and can be capable of special things, which is what we saw in the fourth quarter. You also needed 3 of the most insane lucky things to ever happen in the history of a football game all at the same time in the same quarter for that comeback to even be possible. And then you look at the first 3 quarters and you're like, yes, there were drops. Ayo Manor dropped 2 first downs. Chestnut dropped a pass. Ridley dropped a pass. Tyler Lockett dropped a pass. The receivers got to do better, but he also has to learn to do better. And so I think what we saw is sort of what he is right now, which is an inconsistent rookie player who is capable of brilliance and capable of a lot of questionable kind of poor arm angles, poor throws, throw it in the dirt. The easy plays sometimes don't come easy to him. And so I think that's who he is right now. I don't know if that's who he's going to be, but I think that's who he is.
So after what we saw on Sunday with the 2-minute drive, and he was great in the 2-minute drive. He was awesome in that at the end of the game. Would you rather have Cam Ward, or would you rather, if you had a time machine, take the Giants picks? I think PK reported it was 2 1s and 2 2s. So it was 3, 34, and then their 1 next year and their 2 next year. Would you rather have that, or would you rather have Cam Ward?
I mean, I would be disingenuous to my own opinions and to my audience on our shows if I didn't say I was in favor of the trade back before drafting Cam Ward. I was in favor of the trade back when they drafted Cam Ward, and I'm in favor of the trade back before the season started. And I'm in favor of the trade back now. That is because I'm being honest and loyal to my sort of opinion on this, which I don't think it's fair to just change. I think it's smart to change your opinion when you have new information. If Cam Ward's a Hall of Famer, then like, yes, I was wrong, dead wrong, shouldn't have done it. But nothing I've seen so far from Cam Ward indicates that he's anything other than what we thought he was as a scouted quarterback, which is a very talented, extremely smart, extremely competitive player who people around him gravitate towards him, who works really hard, who loves ball, and sometimes is a little like his footwork doesn't work, or he doesn't feel comfortable in the pocket, or he's a little inaccurate down the field outside the numbers in particular. Like everything that we scouted Cam Ward, good and bad, and in between, is still there. Like I still think he's the exact same player that we scouted as a group before the draft. So I think I have to say the trade back. But now that you have him, and now that there's a ton of quarterbacks appearing to be draftable in the first round next year, and, I think some of them probably are going to end up better than Cam Ward. Some of them will be worse than Cam Ward. So you could do a lot worse than him. I think it's okay. I think it's fine that they took him. I think it's fine to go the other direction. You got to rebuild the roster with one draft, and you got to get your quarterback with the other. And it doesn't really matter which one you do it in, which order you do it in. Burrow and then Jamar Chase, right? Like you can do it however order you want to do it. There are no good there's no elite receivers or like pass rushers maybe necessarily in the top 5 next year. So maybe that's a bummer. I don't think Abdul Carter is necessarily all that much better than Reuben Bain or Keldrick Falk at Auburn or TJ Parker at Clemson, David Bailey at Texas Tech. The receivers are all kind of middle first round players. The next year, 27 is the year. I know that's like way too far, but that's 27 is the year you want the receiver. That's Jeremiah Smith, Ohio State, Ryan Williams, Cam Coleman out of Auburn. All 3 will be top 10 picks. I guarantee it. You want to guarantee? That's what I'll guarantee is 3 receivers those three names, top 10, 2027. That's when you want to get your star number one for Cam. But I don't know. We shall see. I still think trade back is always the right answer. But that's sort of me being kind of, I don't know, conservative maybe about it. I don't know.
Braden Gall is with us. Last one for you on the Titans on the Simmons front. I said I would set the asking price at a first-round pick. If somebody were to offer me a 2026 first-round pick for Jeffery Simmons, I'd make the trade. I don't care if the pick ends up being number 32, if it ends up being pick number 24. Again, it to me is 5 years of controllable young play of a controllable young player at least, in which you will have for Cam Ward's age 24 to 29 seasons. To me, it's as simple as that. And if I don't get offered a first-round pick, I won't make the trade because Simmons is playing at an all-pro level. I feel like the fans have gone from trade Simmons, he doesn't do anything anyways, to we can't trade Simmons. I think a first-round pick is fair. That's what I would do. What do you make of my suggestion, which is set the price at a first-round pick? If you get it, do it. If you don't, and go on from there. Your thoughts?
I think that's fair. And a lot of that, I think that's the right approach. I think a lot of it also has to hinge on your private conversations with Simmons and his agent over the course of the next few weeks, right? I'd like to think that this is not just contract year Simmons, that I actually, talking to him in the preseason, I think he is a different person. He's a different human, as is expected at his age. Everyone should be evolving and becoming a different version of themselves at his age. Money doesn't change you. It just makes you more of who you are. And if you're the Titans and you don't know who he is already and feel comfortable looking at a potential new contract with him and saying, we know who you're going to be during these next 3 years. If you're not comfortable with that, then you can't do the deal and you got to look to trade him. But if you're having conversations with him over the course of the next few weeks and you feel like you probably can get something reasonable done, and you believe, because you've been around him his entire adult career, that you trust him to come back into camp next year in the same shape, with the same motivation and the same leadership qualities, because all that's kind of new for him. He's a different type of leader today. And I don't think that's because he's in a contract year. I think it's because he's older. I think he's mature about it. And I think he understands that he is that big of a deal to that team if he's at his best. And he's clearly playing at his best, maybe ever of his career. So I think you have to try to negotiate the deal. And if you don't feel like you're close at all, maybe that first rounder becomes a second rounder, right? Maybe that's what you have to think about, is you have to make adjustments on the fly, knowing that he wants $42 million a year. And you guys are the Titans are like, nah, we just can't do that. That's not it doesn't make sense for us to do that where we are as a roster. So I don't know, trade back from 1, 2, or 3 in the draft, maybe twice even in the first round next year, get a couple of extra picks, an extra first, an extra second, trade Simmons for an extra first or an extra second. And all of a sudden you're going to bat with, 6 picks in the next 2 drafts in the first 2 rounds. That's how you rebuild a roster around your star quarterback, if you believe that he's the star quarterback, which they obviously do.
So if somebody offered you a first for Simmons, you would do it?
I think you have to. I mean, this team's not winning the Super Bowl, guys. I'm not trying to be rude here, but they're not making the playoffs. They're not going on some run where they win 6 games. They needed literally the most insane things you've ever seen in a quarter to happen all at once for them to just win a game against an average team. So I just let's just take a step back and be like, look, one great quarter does not change the fact that they played 4.5 awful football games. So if you don't think you can re-sign him, you don't trust him to come into camp next year exactly the way he was this year, which again is not what I'm saying. I'm saying they have to know that by now. You got to make tough decisions, and trading Simmons for a first round pick, I think, helps your team long term. If you think you can, I don't know, if you think you're in contention in the next 2 seasons, then having Jeffery Simmons locked down the middle is worth it. I mean, there's going to be so much. Again, if Ridley's gone and Snead's gone and all these guys, you're going to have tons of cap space. So you got to do something with the money. So
I was very distraught on Saturday. I wanted Vanderbilt to win the game. Vanderbilt did not win the game. But going into it, I picked Alabama to win. I thought Vandy was going to cover, and if it wasn't for that touchdown at the end, they would have covered, and my goodness gracious. But here's what hurt. And again, I'm not a Vanderbilt fan, but I was rooting for Vanderbilt. I was rooting for, the Cinderella to beat the mighty Alabama again and really kind of break through. I thought Diego Pavia cost him the game. I thought after the first quarter, first half or so, I'm like, this team can go mano-a-mano with Alabama. They went into Tuscaloosa and they threw the first punch. And Diego Pavia's fumble and interception, I think, cost them the game. You cannot turn the ball over inside the red zone twice in Tuscaloosa and give yourself a chance to win. Vanderbilt had all the momentum and the lead when Pavia fumbled the first time. Vanderbilt was down by 6 points in the fourth quarter. They had completed the 17-yard pass, or they had completed the 30-yard pass down to the 17-yard line. Vanderbilt's not even in this discussion if Diego Pavia doesn't choose to go to Vanderbilt. They're not even in this discussion if he doesn't fight the NCAA and get an extra year. So it's not like I'm saying, well, Pavia fucked them or anything like that. But I do feel like on Saturday, Diego Pavia cost them the game. Am I wrong for thinking that?
You just like saying fuck now. I look, did the look, if you're in the red zone on the road against an Alabama team that's playing good football and you have an opportunity to try to go score to win the game, you played a pretty good game. So I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater here. Do I think Pavia made some mistakes? Absolutely. But you have decided as an organization, I think this is the right and only decision. You are going to live and die by a 5'8" dynamic superstar quarterback who's got a ton of attention and is just like, you got to let him be who he is. And so sometimes that might mean he makes a mistake or two. And sometimes that means he delivers you historic wins like he did last year. So I think, and this is the beauty of this whole thing, and little shameless promotion here. I'm sitting down with offensive lineman center Jordan White for Vanderbilt immediately after we're done with this. Make sure you check out the 440 Sports Network. We're going to have an entire long conversation with Diego Pavia's center coming up on the SEC Football Live tomorrow and on the YouTube page. So please check that out. But this is like one of the questions I'm going to ask him directly, which is, do players now view losses the same way as experts, media, fans do? Which is, I watched that game. I'm fine with that. Hey, Pavia made some mistakes, lost the game. Fine. But at the end of the day, I saw a team that went toe-to-toe with Alabama, like you said, and played a pretty good football game and didn't clearly belonged on the field with a team that we all think is pretty darn good and belongs maybe in the playoff. The season's all still there for Vanderbilt because of the new playoff era that we're in. Like, and I'm fascinated with the locker room thinking that way. Like, obviously they're disappointed that they lost, but I want to know, like, does a team that now loses in college football just take a deep breath and keep talking about the same shit? And I think they probably do, because every game is still in front of them. Their goals are still sitting there in front of them. They can still absolutely go to the playoff. They can lose another game and still go to the playoff. So, like, I'm fascinated with how that has changed the mentality, because the way I analyze games has changed. You used to see a close loss and you'd be like, oh man, tough one there. Season's kind of over now. And that's not how it is anymore. I saw a team that looked like they belonged in the conversation. Not that they lost their way out of the conversation. They looked like a team that belonged in the conversation. So, UCLA in the comments there. Penn State might have lost their way out of the conversation, but Vanderbilt did not. I saw a Vanderbilt team that belongs in the conversation. So I'm fascinated with how we analyze games now in college football. It's just different, and that's cool. I'm fine with that. I love expansion and teams like Vanderbilt and Missouri all still being in the mix at this time of the year. I think it's great.
Speaking of Penn State, how does this end with James Franklin and Penn State? Is it going to end with James Franklin and Penn State?
I think it increases the likelihood that he's the Florida head football coach. James Franklin has always been mentioned for every single job that has come open in the last few years. Texas, USC, you name it. And what's hilarious is that everybody mentions him for a number of reasons, which is half of Penn State fans aren't really satisfied with him. And that he knows that he could get out before the pitchforks and the torches run him out of town. But that none of those teams really wanted to hire him. And so I think he's a really good coach, but I don't think he's a great coach. I don't think he's elite. And if Florida decides to move on Billy Napier, their two calls are going to be to Lane Kiffin and to James Franklin. And if I'm James Franklin, I am probably looking for an acceptable exit from Happy Valley, which is not new. That's not a new thing. Lincoln Riley left Oklahoma, got out early, right? Like, these guys know how to do that. They know when the temperature around them is feeling kind of weird. You can't go, what did he go tweet about, like, focused on Northwestern? Like, the comment section was hilarious. He's a really, really good coach. I've probably been too hard on him over the years. But the end game situations are what they are. He's made mistakes over the years. They've won some big games, but they've lost almost all of the most important ones. This was different. This is the first time that Penn State hasn't beaten a team. Like James Franklin's record against top 10 opponents, well documented, right?
Right.
1-18 against Big Ten ranked top 10 teams. 1-18 against conference foes inside the top 10. That's an insane number.
Penn State fans are frustrated about losing to Oregon and Ohio State, but it's not like losing to UCLA, which was unacceptable.
But I don't have the numbers in front of me, but like I want to say he is like they're like 56-1 in games in which they're a 7-point favorite or more. Like they do not lose games they're not supposed to. Period. And that's a good quality. That was different. They were a 24-point favorite. It's only like the 6th time in history that an 0-4 team has beaten a top 10 team. Like that was a complete mental breakdown. And the coaching staff is as guilty as the players are in that situation.
Braden Gall, of course, the host of a football show, the Hot Read podcast, the SEC show, and everything else in between. Lame Stream. Have I forgotten any of your many shows?
Those are all mine. We got some news shows as well. If you're not too scared, we got Pod Bless Nashville. Please check that out, where we sort of talk about all the news that's happening in the city. Lame Stream Sports, a football show, SEC Football Live, the Gold Standard, Lower Broad Hockey. If you want Preds coverage as well. We got the Club and Country podcast covering Nashville SC's run to the MLS Cup. They got Messi coming to town. We got all kinds of stuff. Hot Read podcast with myself and James Foster. Let's see what else we got. I think that's about it. There's all kinds of other stuff, but please check us out. We do appreciate it.
There you go. Braden Gall, 440 Sports here on the program. Braden, thank you so much. And we will talk very soon. So I have to get to this. This one has been, for me, I find this story to be fascinating. And that is the Clay Travis ESPN Finebaum drama. Has anybody else been following this? So yesterday, Clay Travis tweeted out that Finebaum had been banned from ESPN, including hits that he had done for years, like his Sunday Sports Center hit. And as soon as Clay Travis put that out, ESPN denied it. But then after ESPN denied it, On3 and AL.com confirmed Clay's reporting. ESPN said this was totally false. Sports Business Journal said they've got Finebaum scheduled to go on Tuesday on Get Up and First Take and everything else. Clay says his sources say that after Clay put it out there that Finebaum had been banned from ESPN, not from the SEC network and his show, but from ESPN, Clay said that that was the damage control to back up the lie that Finebaum wasn't banned. Of course, Finebaum did last week do an interview with Clay Travis in which he said he was contemplating a run for the United States Senate as a Republican from Alabama. Then yesterday, a caller on Finebaum's radio program brought up the news about him being pulled from ESPN's network, and the caller was disconnected and Finebaum giggled. Yes, a little chuckle. So here's what I think happened, and I find this to be fascinating on so many levels. First of all, I think ESPN is lying. I think they're making it up. I think ESPN got mad because Finebaum did the Outkick interview and Finebaum put himself ahead of their company. And people will say, well, Stephen A. Smith says he might run for president and Stephen A. Smith talks politics. Yes. But I bet Stephen A. Smith talked to ESPN before he did any of that. I don't think Finebaum talked to ESPN before he sat down with Clay Travis. And if Stephen A. Smith does decide that he wants to run for president, I bet you ABC News will be the ones to report it and to get the first interview, not Outkick. Finebaum, however, is the key in all of this. And I think he has played it like a total genius. For starters, I wasn't even convinced when Finebaum did the sit down with Clay Travis and said that he was a Republican who voted for Donald Trump. I'm not sure I even believe that. Clay asked him if he voted for Trump, and Finebaum stopped for a second and he looked and he was like, yes. But hey, if you're going to run for Senate in Alabama, you better be a Republican. And if you're going to run for the Senate in Alabama and be a Republican, you better have voted for Donald Trump, or at least told people that you voted for Donald Trump. And if you're going to run for the Senate in Alabama and you voted for Donald Trump and you're going to launch your campaign, the person you should do that with is Clay Travis, who is the new Rush Limbaugh. So if Finebaum decides he actually wants to run for Senate, he's going to win. He has the name recognition. He's told him, I'm a Republican. He's told him he voted for Trump, and he's in good with the new Rush Limbaugh, Clay Travis. It's over. If he runs, he wins. There's not a single politician in Alabama who could beat Paul Finebaum, unless Charles Barkley decided to run as a Republican, which everybody knows he's not. So this is a masterful decision on Paul Finebaum's part. What I guess I don't get is why ESPN seems to be so upset about this. So they get mad and they suspend him? Because let me say something. If you're Finebaum, the number one thing outside of being buddy-buddy with the guy who replaced Rush Limbaugh and having total name recognition in Alabama, the only thing better would be to have some sort of angst in which the media is trying to silence you. I came out as a conservative and ESPN is trying to silence me. And ESPN's already set that up. I have to ask, why did ESPN take this so personally? They should let Finebaum do whatever he wants. And it's pretty obvious if you watch the Paul Finebaum show now, and I say this with all due respect, he's mailing it in anyways. He's over it. He's over sitting there in front of a camera taking callers from the same hillbillies for 4 hours every day about the same shit. Oh, let's go to Bobby, who's in Florida. Hello, Bobby. Hey, Paul, how you doing, man? I tell you what, man, talk about the dangle. It's like watching King of the Hill on repeat without the funny jokes. So Finebaum was probably looking for what was next. And he's probably looking to the Senate. And again, making millions of dollars at ESPN, there's really not a lot of jobs out there that are that much better. So ESPN getting mad at Finebaum for sitting down with Clay was bad for ESPN's business, because now the perception is, regardless of whether or not it's true, the perception is you're silencing them, you're silencing Republicans. That is how people feel about ESPN. Again, regardless as to whether or not it's true, that's how people feel. So I don't know what the fuck ESPN was thinking. I think I know what Finebaum's thinking. I think he's ready to move on. And I also don't buy ESPN saying that, oh, no, this wasn't it. I'm sorry. I just don't buy that. And I don't really give a shit, except that I will miss Paul Finebaum talking college football. And that's pretty much it. Also, the Mark Sanchez story, somebody asked about that in the chat earlier today, about the Mark Sanchez story. Holy crap, that thing's wild. I didn't have an opinion when I found out he got stabbed, other than, oh my God, Mark Sanchez got stabbed. And the more that came out, the more fucked up it is, the more I'm like, I have no idea what happened there. So that's going to do it for us today. Great show here on the program. Loaded show. Of course, we're back tomorrow live at 2 o'clock Central Time on YouTube, and we are wherever you get your podcasts. Like and subscribe. And of course, we're presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Thank you to Braden. Thank you to all of you. We did not have time to get to all your comments. We'll get to them tomorrow, I promise. Stillman and Company, 440 Sports. We are live again tomorrow at 2. Like and subscribe. Get us to 3,000 YouTube subscribers and continue to tell your friends and listen to your podcasts.